Hello everyone, welcome to Management 751 Practicum Course, International Management. I'm the instructor Jing Sun. So for today's topic, we're going to discuss globalization and the global mindset. So in today's agenda, we are trying to structure into two areas, institutions and managing differences. So first, we will explore institutions. So by first starting understanding what are the institutions and why they matters, and then we'll examine what institutions do and how they influence business practice globally, and then we will discuss the institution-based view of the global business, focusing on how institution can shape the strategies and operations of firms across the different countries. And then lastly, we'll look at the various political, legal, economic systems that business must navigate when they operate internationally. And next, when we'll move to the second part of today's agenda, we're going to discuss managing the differences for the paper that I want you to read. So we will introduce the AAA triangles, a framework that helps business managing differences across the borders effectively, and then we'll consider the various globalization options available for the firms and how they can make a choice to choose the best strategies to fit their needs. And so that will be today's major topics. So first of all, let's trying to understand what are the concept of institutions, because the concept is central to our discussion for the global management. And first key point is the institutional transition. So this refers to the comprehensive changes introduced in both the formal and informal rules of the game that can affect the firms which as the players in the system. So these transitions can significantly impact how the firms operate, especially in the global context, because they may experience different regions varying degree of the institutional change. And then, which is key here, is understanding the institution-based view, because this is a very leading perspectives suggesting that the success and the failure of the companies, they are constrained by the institutional institutions or institutional factors which they are operated in. So this is trying to emphasize the importance of understanding how firms need to navigate through this institutional environment in order to be successful, especially in the global markets. So here, because the institutions we're referring to as a formal, both formal and informal ones, as we discussed. So there's rules dictating how firms need to behave, compete, or collaborate in different markets. And lastly is the institutional frameworks. So this is also include both formal and informal ones. So that include everything from laws, regulations to cultural norms, and these are factors because altogether they shape the environment that can influence the strategic decisions. So understanding all these key concepts will help you to really appreciate the context of this institutional context, which is especially where firms operate in the international business arena. So now let's explore these ideas further in order to get some examples and case studies to get a real sense of it. As shown on the table, so you can see that there are two types of institutions, categorized as formal institutions and informal institutions. So the formal institutions, which we're referring to as a supportive, pillars and regulatory pillars and the cohesive power of the government. So on the other hand, the informal institutions is more about norms, cultures, and ethics. So they're more like a normative or cognitive. So you see that dimensions, if we focusing the degree of formality, we're trying to first thinking about the formal institutions, they are more officially established and reinforced. So it's more about rules, regulations, and so they must follow in certain countries. So in the supportive pillars, so here is like a regulatory coercive pillars. So means like the backup by the legal authorities or enforcement mechanisms. So for example, if a company violates a certain environmental a regulation, it may face some fines or legal actions. So that can be one of the examples. So on the other hand, like the informal institutions, they're those unwritten rules. So norms, cultures, ethics. So these are supported by normative cognitive pillars. So they are related to the shared values, norms that they can influence either either individuals or firms, how they behave in that arena. So understand this can help you to grasp how different types of institutions can influence the practice in different ways. This is just a summary of what is formal institutions and what is informal institutions. We already discussed it just now. So now let's focusing on what institutions actually do and what are the impact on their business and economies. So first, there is a concept called transaction cost that is important because institutional plays a very important role in determining the transaction cost. And it means the costs associated with the economic transactions, or we can even think more broadly, like the cost of doing business. So they can include costs like searching costs for informations, negotiating contracts with your buyers, your suppliers, and also reinforcing the agreements. And the very efficient institutions, they can help the firms to reduce those costs. So make it easier and cheaper for companies to operate in the country. Whereas inefficient institutions can really increase the transaction cost, like adding barrier for the regular or daily business operations. So next thing is important is the opportunism. So opportunism is also we think as the act of acting very self-interest seeking. So the companies they are trying to behave opportunistically, right? And institutions is acting as a way to control for these opportunistic behaviors by reinforcing the rules and norms in order to align the interests together to create more of the collaborative goods for all the players. So for example, a very robust legal frameworks can help company to deter the opportunistic behaviors by making it costly and risky to act purely on self-interest. And also the last one is the transition economy. So a transition economy is a label for the subset of emerging economy. So particularly those who move from the central planning to the market competition. So it's a transition. So this so examples we can find is like in China, in Russia, Vietnam, Poland. So these countries, so these economies, because their institutions can be evolving all the time from state controlled mechanism to more of the market orientation frameworks. So it's still in the process. So the transition often involves changes in laws, regulations, and also in norms, so that can create both opportunities and challenges for companies which operating in this environment. Let's take more time and to discuss further about what is the institutional based view, because it's an important framework. Because this first emphasizing on the role of institutions, both formally and informally, in shaping the behaviors of the firms inside that global market. So this is a more complement to the we call it, there's another view called industry dynamics, or firm-specific resources-based view. So resource-based view is a very important theory in strategy. And like industry dynamics, or we call it industry-based view, is like a theory in the industry level. So by highlighting it's more of a complementing to these two theories by highlighting how the external environment, especially rules and norms, can influence the global operations. So focusing on this institutional based view, and this is trying to say both as both formal and informal institutions do matters, and also their concept in that are important. The first one is the bounded rationality. So this concept because highlights the needs to make rational decisions despite having incomplete information. So especially in the global context, managers, they don't really have complete information. They have to make decisions based on limited data, and because of there's so many complexities and uncertainties and evolving informations changing all the time. So understanding the bounded rationality, that can help companies to navigate through this limitations, and then strive to make a best possible solutions based on available information rather than on complete information. So another important concept here indicates is from this non-market strategy. So non-market strategy actually is a sub area for strategy topics, and nowadays become very popular. So it involves strategy that focuses on leveraging these political and social relations that rather than a pure economic transactions. So companies also often engage in the non-market strategies to influence the regulations and build relationship with local governments, or shape their institutional environments in order to get their advantage. So for example, a company can lobby for their favorite trade policy, or to form some alliances with local stakeholders in order to get a smooth entry into that new market, right? So the last point is the institutional work. So this is referring to the actions that individuals or organizations take, create, maintain, or disrupt the institutions. So firm may engage in this institutional work in order to shape their environment and in a way that can benefit them. So this is a reversed force. So the direct force is coming from institution to the firms, and now this institutional work is telling the firms it's also having some sending force back to the institutions in order to change the institutions. So it's showing more clear in those diagrams. So you can see institutions, firms, and firm behaviors, and the institution-based view is focusing more on the dynamic interactions between the institutions and the firms. So by considering the firm behaviors is that interaction, especially because it's a reflection of the formal and informal factors that influence the frameworks. There are two important propositions of the institution-based view. So the first one is they assume that managers and firms, they should rationally pursuing their interest and making rational choices within the scope of this formal and informal constraints. And what if they don't? So here is an example where firms that may not always trying to act rationally. So for example, Volkswagen's emission scandal, which happened in 2015, and it was revealed that Volkswagen, as one of the world's largest automobile manufacturers, has installed software in their diesel vehicles that was designed to cheat these emission tests. So this software allowed the vehicles to meet regulatory standards during the testing, while in reality the cars emit pollutants far above the legal limits during the normal driving conditions. So why you think the firms did that? Because there is a conflict between the short-term gains versus their long-term cost. So the VW management likely to believe that by using this cheat software, they would maintain the competitive edge in the diesel market and reducing costs associated with developing the compliant engines and continue to sell their cars were not truly environmental friendly. But this decision may have seemed rational in the short term, but it completely disregards the long term, like a legal, financial, reputational risk, right? So this is an example on the reverse side of like a being rational. And the second proposition is the why we think about this informal or like a constraints are usually more stronger, having more powerful than this formal constraints. So this is more because of there's a cultural embeddedness and social norms that are so heavily for each of the institutional contexts, for each of the markets that firms are trying to compete in. So because informal institutions, they are deeply embedded in the cultural and social fabric of a society, right? So they shape individuals' behaviors and expectations in many ways, the formal rules cannot act on. So for example, like in many countries, the cultural norms of respecting elderly people, or they have this hierarchical authority, can significantly influence the business practice over often overriding their formal procedures or laws. And also the social compliances, people are often likely to follow informal norms because they are socially enforced through the mechanisms like peer pressures, reputations, community approval. These type of things are all very important. So this is important to acknowledge that the informal constraints, because they the content specifics, so need to adapt to, the business practice in order to meet these informal expectations. So that can create a certain institution practice more flexible, and often the informal institutions, they also give some room for the flexibilities and adaptabilities that can respond to the changing environment or conditions more quickly, unlike the a formal institution need to always be rigid and slower to changes, right? So that the informal part is always evolving or reacting more quickly. And also there's some other things about this so the stabilities in the absence of the formal institutions, because especially in the emerging market, sometimes they have a weak governance, and so the formal institutions are weak and they're corrupted or absent. So in case of that, so where the informal institutions rise up and taking the major roles of influence the business practice. So on this slide, it provides some summaries for the different type of political systems. So now it's come to an important question: why these political systems are critically important, especially in the global business and the global management context. Because I think the first reason is because so these determines the creations and implementations which governs the business operates. So it includes everything from the laws, environmental regulations, taxations, to the IP rights, right, and trade regulations. So these dictates or regulates how the business operates in certain markets. So the consistency and the predictability are very important, especially in a stable political systems. A business can expect always having consistent enforcement of the law, so which can help them to do the long-term plannings and to have a more of a relatively long-term goals. However, if the business operates in a very unstable environment, frequent changes in the laws and unpredictables, they can create a significant risk for the business. So these risks can be actually measured in what are the expected returns that companies want from operating in certain areas. So and another point is because the economic policies, which is more direct to the business practice, because it's referring to whether companies have the market access, the free market access to this market, whether there is a trade barriers, or whether they have certain protections policies that can be adverse to the foreign entrants or foreign players. So, for example, if a country with a very kind of a democratic, like a market-oriented political systems, so they have fewer trade barriers, and often they have more of the open market, so make it easy for business foreign companies to operate in that areas. So, and also this is also related to the interventions, because in more of the authoritarians or central planned political systems, so government often have greater controls over economy, so which setting prices, controlling for the supplies of goods, or even have subsidies, or so which can strongly influence the whole operations, so that can affect how companies operate and compete in their areas. And as I said, the stabilities and risk management is important. So when you are trying to create your term project, so you also need to analyze what are the political concerns and risks that the company is doing business in order to practically evaluate these pros and cons. Any risk can be quantified. So here we're going to discuss how you can doing research in order to find the political risk related to how a professional analyst trying to evaluate each country's political systems, and then come up with their ratings. So here are two websites that can be helpful for your term project. We all know that legal system is a very important factors in the institutions that can be constraints for the foreign companies operating in the international management arenas. So understanding the legal environments is very crucial for companies trying to navigate this complexity in the international markets. So to ensure that they are compliant with the regulation, and they're also trying to mitigate those risks, and trying to effectively manage their operations in the international borders. So here is why they are important. So first, as I said, the regulatory compliance is the basic things. So they first need to understand the local laws, and also adapting their business practice in order to meet the requirement of those laws, the regulatory requirement, and whether they have legal labor laws that might require certain different working conditions, the contract terms, and their employee benefits in different countries. So all these details need to be followed and carefully examined. So understanding these laws is essential for human resources management and operations. And also, in terms of the enforcement of a contract, and also if there's a dispute, they need to resolve those disputes. So where they also need to understand the differences between different legal systems, contract laws, so that how manipulate how the contracts are formed, interpreted, and enforced, right? So in the international management, contract are crucial because they defines the relationship between your suppliers, your customers, your partners, your alliances, employees. So having a very deep understanding on these local legal systems will allow you to protect their stakeholders' interests. And also in terms of the disputes, so different countries, they have different methods or approach to solving disputes, including courts like arbitrations, mediations. So all these are the knowing frameworks that can solving the dispute. So this is also essential in order to understand and mitigate these legal risk. And also it comes to if it comes to the IP protection, because if thinking about innovation is very important part of the strategy. So protecting innovation, so IP laws can plays a crucial role here. So the trademarks, copyrights, patents, and the trade secrets, and what are the level of protections? So in each of the aspect. So companies, they may operate internationally. So this is crucial to understand how they can register and protect IP rights in different countries, different jurisdictions, and to protect the unauthorized use or infringement, right? And then another aspect is the foreign investment and the market entry. So if you're thinking about investment regulations, so we will talk about the foreign investment later, but this the legal system is attached to that. So it's the legal system governs the foreign investment rules, including restrictions on the foreign ownership. So for example, I used to work in setting up a joint venture. So at that time, a Chinese government used to have this a regulation saying that in order to set up the car manufacturing factories in China, you need to have at least the 50% share, stock share ownership by the local players, the local companies, in order to establish that. So at that time, I worked for Mercedes-Benz. In order to set up the Mercedes-Benz factories, we need to find a Chinese alliance partners. So in order to locally build Mercedes cars in China. Okay, I think the last point is also about the taxations and financial reporting, because in different countries they have different tax laws. They have also corporate tax or custom duties. These things you need to understand these rates and procedures and how to report those taxes in order to optimize the tax plannings and also avoid the legal issues. Because there's some examples of how Google screwed up in some of the European countries, and then got later legally sued by the European unions. And that one is financial reporting requirements. Then you need to understand these how the legal system dictates a company must report in their financial reports. Their accounting standards, auditing requirements, disclosures, and all these things. So this table gives you a closer look on the three major legal traditions and some of the countries that follow the systems: the civil law countries and the common law countries and the theocratic law countries. So as we discussed earlier, why this property rights, IP laws are important in this as a part of the legal systems and important in the international management. So here is a question for you to think about. Would you rather do business in a country that uses civil law or common law, and why? Okay, so let me help you to give you some more information on this, to the differences between this civil law and the common law. So civil law provides you a more codified and predictable legal environment where laws are very clearly written and the judicial decisions are based on these statutes. And the common laws, like in the US, offers more flexibilities and more adaptabilities, with laws involving judicial precedents or the interpretations. So the factors you will need to consider, maybe it's a legal predictability, the flexibility, and also need to think about the nature of your business and how each system might impact your operations, like the contracts, if there is a dispute, how can you solve the process, right? The last but not least important system is the economic system, because it's crucial, shaping the overall environment for business to operate, nearly influence everything from the market conditions to the regulatory frameworks to consumer behaviors to competitive dynamics. So understanding the economic system of a country is very important in making a decision if you want to make a market entry into that market, or if you want to form international business strategies and to operate in that countries, and to do risk management for that international business. It's all important. So let's think about why this is important. So here it tells you certain different types of the economies, whether it's like a market economy, or it's a command economy, or whether it's a certain mixed economies. So it's already explained in the textbooks. So for example, in China, it's more these days like a mixed economy where there's a blend of free market principles with significant government interventions. So creating both opportunities and also challenges for business. So understanding the economic systems is also means that you can see more clear on the opportunities, because identify opportunities for growth and investment is a way that to for the foreign investment for this international management opportunities. So for example, in a market economy, so that may offer more opportunities from the consumer driven innovations, while in a command economies might provide access to more of a large scale projects led by the state. So you need to leveraging different systems to evaluate whether there's a match between your opportunities and the risk. And also, you need to thinking about this regulatory environment, the government interventions, because government also has a role in the economies. So the systems dictates the level of government interventions in the marketplace. In the more controlled economies, they have very significant state ownerships, so business may face strict regulations, so the government may oversight affecting how they operate and compete with other companies. So they're also relate to the policy stabilities and predictabilities, as we discussed earlier with the political systems as well. So another important aspect is thinking about these resource allocations and availabilities. So access to resources determines how resources such as for example labor, capital, raw materials, so they can be allocated. So if you're thinking about in a free market economy scenarios, so resources are allocated mostly driven by supply and demand, right? Allow companies to compete for resources based on price and efficiency. While in if in the command economies, so the government may have control some resources allocations. They have the power, so potentially they will limiting the access or creating some inefficiencies in that. And then you will need to thinking about the labor market dynamics. So understanding the economic systems can help you to navigate how international managers they need to manage in these labor markets. So for example, in the market economy, business may have the access to a more flexible labor market with a wide range of skills, while in demand economy, labor allocation may be more rigid and controlled by the state. And lastly, there may be trade policies, and also there may be investment policies, and so all these related to how the companies can operate in certain areas. And then if you're thinking about a consumer behavior and the market demands, so that there will also be differences. So in the market economy, consumer behavior is more driven by preferences, their income levels, the market trends. So allowing the business to tailor the products and service to meet those demands, right? So but in the command economy, often the customer choices are more limited. And also sometimes the government influencing these consumption patterns as well. So if you're trying to predict the market demands, So understanding the economy systems is important to help business to assess the market demands more accurately. So for example, in a more like mixed economies, like demand might be shaped by both the market force and the government policies. So they're require you to take a more nuanced approach for the product development and also marketing strategies. So here is another question for you to think of. So many people view that the United States as a mixed economy. So in your opinion, so what do you think? Do you think that is the mix changing? And if so, then how is the shifting to a more like a command economy or shifting toward more of a market economy? So let me give you some hints. So if you're thinking about like what are the market economy influences? So are there any signs that the US is embracing more free market principles? So the signs may be such as like a deregulation, tax cut, reduced government intervention in certain sectors. So these can be the signs. So if you're thinking about on the reverse side, what are the command economy influences of the signs? So they can be more regulations, more government ownerships, or influence over certain like industries like healthcare, energies, or technology. So these are all can serve as a signs. So what is your opinion? So private ownership versus the state ownership, they representing two different models for business organizations and management. So each have this like implications to our international management philosophies. So here listed certain like different aspects of the differences, like the different like objectives and goals for the companies, right? So as for the private companies, their goal may be like maximizing profits, and for the state-owned companies, they mean like trying to find a balance between the fair deal for all the stakeholders. And so one thing it implication is like they may have like a different if managers in the private firms, they may focusing on more of the competitive strategies like a market expansion, return on investment. So in the contract, like managers in the state-owned enterprises, so they may need to balance profitability with more of a broader political and social objectives, which can influence throughout their decision makings and also influence the strategic priorities. So also I would think about besides the things that they also have a different like decision making process, right? So in the private ownership, maybe the autonomy and the speed may be faster normally than the state-owned companies, and it's more willing to take risks, and it's more innovative, more competitive in the marketplace than the state-owned companies. And in stereotype, the state-owned companies are always considered as more bureaucratic, and it's more risk aversions. So what indications it links to the if you work for the managers as a private companies, you may have more flexibility to adapt quickly to the changing market conditions, right? And if you are managers in the state-owned enterprise, so you may face delays and constraints due to the bureaucratic processes. So that can directly affect the speed and for your operations. And also, if you're thinking about as I said here, fundings of the companies, so the private companies are more coming for the market-based financing options, but for the state-owned companies, they have also state resources that can be a direct substitutes subsidiaries or banks that own and control and give them a more favorable treatments for that. And also they may face a different regulatory requirements and the compliance, right? So for the maybe the private companies, what they need to comply is the market regulations and global standards they need to think about. But for the state ownership companies, there's also the aspect of government oversight. So the need to subject to the intensive government oversight. So there may be more like complex regulations, and some of the regulation may be politically motivated. So it's a more like a complex scenarios. So in the private firms, managers, they need to focusing on meeting those global regulatory standards, ensure the compliance across different jurisdictions. But in the state-owned enterprise, they will need to thinking about balancing these requirements with additional government requirements and oversights. And I think one of the most important thing is thinking about the performance measures. In the private companies, we're talking about the financial performance, right? Success in the companies are primarily measured by the financial matrix, like revenue growth, profitabilities, return on investment, and the shareholder value, these things. And always talking about accountability to the shareholders. But in the state-owned enterprises, because there are more matrix, so they often evaluate the with a combination of financial a performance, but also need to think about the social, political, and other economic objectives, whether they can create jobs or they can contributing to their a national competitiveness goals, or their service deliveries, all these things. So that means if you work for different types of companies, then you need to having different focuses. So this table is the continued summary from the last table, from the different aspect: the liquidation of the firm, the appointment and dismissal of the management team, the compensation of the management. So these differences. So there are all type of differences that can be analyzed here. Even for the ethical a cultural ethical considerations. So for example, the private companies, they more often cultivate their own corporate cultures, emphasize on innovation, performance, profitabilities. So the ethical considerations are more generally aligned with the shareholder interests and the corporate social responsibility initiatives, right? And for the state-owned companies, so they have cultures, they emphasize public service, social responsibility, and alignment with government policies. So they're a consideration maybe slightly different. So there's some ethical dilemmas, especially for managers in the state-owned enterprise. They may face the dilemmas when government directions may have conflicts with the global ethical standards or the company's commercial interests. So managers in the private company may focusing to align these cultures with global practice and shareholder expectations. But here the more complicated scenarios for the state-owned enterprise to balancing those complexities with these private service obligations, and also there's some as I mentioned, the conflicts or dilemmas may occur from these multiple goals. Let's continue our discussion on globalization and the global mindset by moving to the second major area, managing differences. So far, we explored the role of institutions and how they shape the global business environment. Now we'll shape our focus to how businesses can effectively manage the differences that arise when operating across borders. So in the agenda, we're going to discuss two things, which is understanding the AAA triangle. And it means it's a framework that help business strategize around the differences they encounter in global markets. So we'll dive into what the AAA triangle is and how it can guide firms in choosing the right approach for their international operations. And then we will talk about what are your globalization options. And in that area, we will also explore the different globalization strategies available for businesses. So AAA triangle framework is in the paper that I uploaded on the Canvas. I ask you to read about it. So this framework is developed by Kampaj Kimawat. So he is an NYU Stern professor, and he developed this strategic tools in the international management to help firms decide how to approach globalization. So this framework first identifies three distinctive strategies: adaptation, aggregation, and arbitrage. So for firms that can use to create values in the international markets, they can follow either of this approach. So each strategy represents a different way of managing the complexity of operating across multiple countries with diverse economic, cultural, and regulatory environments, which we talked about this institutional environments in different aspects. So adaptation. So it means adjusting to local markets. So the objective is that is to achieve the local relevance by adjusting products, service, and business practice to meet the needs and preferences of local markets. So this strategy helps firms to cater to local tastes, comply with the local regulation, and respond to local competition. So it focusing more on customization of the products, and also sometimes have local partnerships in order to better searching for their local alliances and joint ventures in order to get more insights for the local markets. And they also use localized marketing strategies to tailor their advertising and branding strategies in order to resonate with their local customers. So there's some examples. For example, McDonald's is a classic example of adaptation. So McDonald's menu is to suit local tastes in different countries. So for example, in India, so they have a significant portion of the population, they are vegetarians. So McDonald's offers a range of vegetarian options like McAloo Tiki, a potato-based burger. So in Japan, McDonald's introduced this teriyaki burger to cater to local flavor preferences. So this localization helped McDonald's to stay relevant and competitive in diverse markets. And the second strategy is called the aggregation. So it means achieving economics of scale. So the idea is aggregation aims to achieve the economic scale by creating the regional or global operations that can standardize the products, service, and the processes that across multiple markets. So this is a totally in the opposite idea with this adaptation. So this strategy, the aggregation strategy, on the other hand, focusing on the efficiency and the cost reduction by leveraging similarities across markets. So they are more focusing on the product standardization rather than customization. They're also trying to centralize the operations. So for example, establishing their centralized manufacturing or R&D or marketing operations that can serve multiple markets. So they're also trying to do a global branding, build a strong global brand that can maintain consistency across the different markets. So Apple is an example of this aggregation strategy that offer very standardized products like iPhone, iPad, MacBook across the globe, right? The design and features, even the marketing campaigns are largely consistent across different countries. And the third one is arbitrage. So it means exploiting differences between markets. So this idea is to involve exploiting differences between national or regional markets to achieve the cost advantages or other benefits. So this also to leverage disparity in labor cost, tax regimes, or regulatory environments, or resources availability across different countries. So in this approach, that you're thinking about this a concept of a global supply chain management to sourcing materials or components coming from the countries where they are cheaper and more readily available. And this is also related to the concept of labor arbitrage. So it's establishing production facilities in countries with lower labor costs to reduce the overall production expenses. And there are also tax optimizations, structural to business taking advantage of favorable tax laws in different jurisdictions. So Nike is using this arbitrage strategy by setting up manufacturing products in different countries where labor costs are low, such as Vietnam, Indonesia, or Bangladesh. So by doing that, so Nike reduces the production costs significantly, allowing it to maintain competitive pricing and also maximizing its profits. The following two slides summarize the globalization options which corresponding to this adaptation, aggregation, and arbitrage options. And it summarized upon the points where the competitive advantage for each of the strategies and how do we configure this business models along these frameworks, and what will be the coordination issues, key points along this strategy, and what controls that we should implement. So continue the discussion. So there are other aspects we need to consider. The change blockers. So whom should we watch out for internally? So in the adaptation strategy, the main internal challenge comes from the entrenched country chiefs who may resist change and could undermine their authority or the status quo in order to their local markets. So these individuals may push back against the global strategies and that they perceive as threatening to their established way of doing business. So in the aggregation, so the resistance may come from all powerful units, regional or account heads. So these individuals may resist efforts to standardize or integrate operations across regions, particularly if they see it as limiting their controls or autonomy. So in the arbitrage, heads of the key functions, such as finance or supply chain, may resist change, and that could interrupt established practice or relationships. They may be particularly wary of a strategy that involves significant shifts in sourcing, production, or distribution that will impact their areas of responsibilities. So if you're thinking about the corporate diplomacy aspect, so it means how should we approach corporate diplomacy? So in the adaptation strategy, so when engaging corporate diplomacy, it is important to address issues of concerns, but with discretion. So this emphasizes on cultivating a strong local presence while being sensitive to the local norms and values. So company must avoid appearing insensitive or imposing foreign practice that would provoke a backslash. So in the aggregation strategy, companies should avoid the appearance of homogenizing things or especially if they are US based. So the key is to be sensitive to any a potential backlash that would rise from a perceived cultural insensitivity or imposition of a one-size-fits-all approach. So in the arbitrage, a diplomacy should focus in addressing the exploitation or displacement of suppliers, channels, or intermediaries, which are most point to the political disruptions. So firms must navigate this relationship carefully in order to avoid the negative impacts that from changes in sourcing or distribution that would lead to local unrest or political pushbacks. And the last one is corporate strategy. So what strategic leverages that do you have? So in the adaptation ones, the strategic levers include the scope selection, variation, decentralization, partitioning, a modularization, flexibility, set up the partnership, recombination, and innovation. And so because this strategy allows firms to tailor their offerings and operations to meet the unique needs of each market. And in the aggregation strategies, their options here include organizing by regions or other country grouping of the product or business units or functions or platforms or competencies or clients industries. So the idea is to integrate and streamline operations across different regions while still achieving economics of scale. And for the arbitrage, the strategy focusing more on exploiting differences in cultures, like administrative environment, like a geographic or economic environment, and these levers engage the firms to optimizing their global operations and taking advantage of specific regional or national advantages.